What if the things you thought were your flaws were actually signs of a very intelligent mind? Not the textbook kind of intelligence, not straight A's or fancy degrees. The real kind. The kind psychology keeps finding in the research. And here's what that actually looks like. It procrastinates, it swears, it lies awake at 2 a.m. having arguments with people who don't even know the argument is happening. If that sounds like you, this video is going to explain a lot.
You swear, and you're actually good at it. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack better words, but because you know exactly which word fits. And sometimes that word isn't a polite one. A study in the journal Language Sciences tested this. People who could list the most swear words in 1 minute also listed the most animal names in 1 minute. Why? Because they had a bigger vocabulary across every category, not just the clean ones. The old assumption was that people who swear can't express themselves properly. The research says the opposite. They just have more words than most, and they use all of them. You find things funny at completely the wrong moment. Not on purpose. You're at a funeral or a serious meeting, and something strikes you as absurdly funny, and you have to physically fight it. A study in cognitive processing found that people who appreciate dark humor score higher on verbal intelligence and emotional stability. Here's the simple reason why. Dark humor requires your brain to hold two opposite ideas at the same time and find where they crash into each other. Most brains can't do that quickly enough. Yours does it automatically. The people who don't get it aren't missing a sense of humor. They're missing the processing speed. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. You're in the shower, running through a difficult talk that's happening on Thursday. You're driving and still replaying something you said 2 days ago, figuring out the one sentence that would have landed better. Most people call this anxiety. Psychologists call it predictive modeling. Your brain isn't spiraling. It's preparing. It's running through possible outcomes before they happen, which is the exact same skill behind negotiation, leadership, and emotional intelligence. The only problem? It has no off switch. It runs constantly, even at 2 a.m., even over things that don't matter anymore. You accidentally pick up other people's accents and habits. You spend a weekend with someone who speaks slowly, and your pace drops. You talk to someone expressive, and by the end of the conversation, your hands are moving in ways they weren't before. You drive home doing someone's accent and hoping no one noticed. Researchers call this linguistic accommodation. It happens because your brain picks up patterns automatically, below the level of conscious thought. Most people hear how someone talks. Your brain studies it like a system and starts running it before you've made any decision to. That's not embarrassing. That's rare. Certain sounds, lights, or textures genuinely bother you, more than they bother others. The restaurant is too loud and you lose your train of thought completely. The fluorescent light is doing something to your focus that's hard to explain. The wrong fabric on your skin is so distracting it competes with everything else. Research found that people in high IQ groups report much higher sensory sensitivity than average. The reason is straightforward. The same nervous system that processes ideas more deeply also picks up more from the environment. You're not being difficult. Your brain just receives more signal than most, and it processes all of it.
You can't follow a rule that doesn't make sense to you. It's not rebellion. It's more like someone is telling you that 2 + 2 = 5 and expecting you to just nod along. Research in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that people with higher cognitive ability are significantly more likely to question authority. Not out of attitude, but because their brain is constantly evaluating logic. And it cannot simply stop doing that because someone senior is in the room. You follow rules you understand. You respect people who earn it. What you've never been able to do is pretend something is right when you can clearly see that it isn't.
You procrastinate most on the things that matter most. Small tasks, fine, easy, done. But the thing with real stakes, the project, the creative work, the decision that actually matters, you can't start. And from the outside, that looks like laziness. From the inside, it feels like standing at the edge of something enormous. Studies on high IQ individuals found that the same ability that makes them excellent at complex work also makes them able to imagine failure in very precise detail. And when your whole sense of self is tied to being capable, falling short isn't just disappointing. It feels like losing something you can't afford to lose. So the brain stalls. Not because you don't care, because you care too much.
Relationships are harder for you than they look for everyone else. Not because you don't want connection, but because your brain never really switches off.
Even when you're with someone you love, you notice the small inconsistency in what they said. You can feel where something is heading before they've even thought about it. You've sometimes processed the end of something that only just started. Research consistently shows that people with higher IQs report more frustration in relationships, not because they're cold, but because real intimacy requires you to stop analyzing and just be present. And that is genuinely hard for a brain that's always running.
When someone says something wrong, your whole body reacts before your brain catches up. There's a physical tension, a quiet discomfort you have to manage so it doesn't show on your face. And it doesn't matter if the person is a stranger or your boss, wrong lands the same way regardless of who's delivering it. The interesting part is that this same reflex turns inward too. You catch your own contradictions. You notice when your own thinking has a hole in it. You can't hold a position you know is wrong just because changing it is uncomfortable. Psychologists call this epistemic humility. It means you care more about being accurate than about sounding right. In a world that rewards confidence over correctness, that is exhausting. But it is also rare. You doubt yourself more than people who are less capable than you? This isn't a coincidence. It's almost inevitable. You already know that people who know very little tend to overestimate themselves because they don't know enough to see what they're missing. But it works the other way too. The more you actually understand something, the more clearly you can see everything that's uncertain about it. The edges, the gaps, the places where the honest answer is, I don't know. So while less informed people sound completely confident, you hesitate because you can see exactly how many ways being wrong is possible. That hesitation isn't weakness. It isn't a lack of ability. It might be the clearest sign of a genuinely intelligent mind. None of these signs look like what we were taught intelligence is supposed to look like. They're messy, they're inconvenient, they're sometimes lonely. But every single one of them shows up because a particular kind of mind cannot help producing them. They can't be faked, they can't be performed. They just appear, quietly, consistently, in people whose brains were always working harder than anyone around them realized. So if this video felt less like a list and more like someone finally putting words to something you felt your whole life, that's exactly what it was meant to be. Which one of these hit home for you? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe. There's a lot more of this coming. Take care of yourself.